Good evening and thanks so much for joining us. One of two Lloydminster men charged in connection with a recent homicide has been captured by police. RCMP have arrested 34-year-old James Fensom in connection with the death of Dustin Ferrante at the Best Lodge Motel in December. Aggravated assault is one of multiple charges Fensom is facing, but police are still on the hunt for 27-year-old Damon Mercer. Mercer is charged with second-degree murder. Well, the city announced plans this morning for a new annual winter festival. The event is taking place when the original Hockey Day in Canada was scheduled. And the idea isn't a new one. It came from a previous festival the city held 3 years ago.
After we did that one, I said we should make this a regular event. And nobody picked up the torch, but a lot of people believed it was something worth doing. When you saw what happened out at Bud Miller Park that day, you saw the number of people, number of things going on. It makes good sense that in a place like Lloydminster, we'd celebrate winter and all the things that you can do in winter.
Indoor and outdoor activities are planned, including ball hockey, public skating, marshmallow roasting. It will take place at the Service Sports Centre and is free of charge. Professional hockey is also part of the weekend. The Canadian Women's Hockey League includes 2 games by Team Alberta and the Montreal Stars. There are also fan events on the schedule.
Honorary captains for the games. They're going to be doing autograph sessions and then some camps for our female program. They're also going to be doing like a meet and greet after one of the games with female hockey players.
The Winter Festival is also underway next year when the border city hosts Hockey Day in Canada. A lawyer for a Saskatchewan teen accused of abducting his 14-year-old pregnant girlfriend last week says the outcome of the case may surprise people. Edmonton lawyer Daryl Royer says that everyone in the case says the girl went willingly. He says the case may be resolved in a way that doesn't involve a kidnapping conviction. The 16-year-old boy appeared in court on Monday and was sent to a youth home until his next court date on February 14th. The boy's 38-year-old mother and 16-year-old boy are also charged and set to appear in court on that same day. Well, violent crime continues to top headlines here in the border city, and 2 Lloydminster men in their early 20s are charged in connection with recent homicides. On part 2 of our recent interview with local RCMP, we talk about gang recruitment and the public safety. Let's talk a little bit about the people who are incarcerated and the people who are involved in the gangs. The ages here stand out to me more than anything. 22 years old for 2 of the people who have been charged. How are they recruited into this lifestyle? Is it something that starts early with drug use themselves, or what's happening? These were 2 local residents.
From my experience, typically what happens is you'll have a user who has a problem,
okay,
and is a drug addict themselves, and they end up incurring debt. Mm-hmm. And when they incur debt, then they have to either pay back the debt, either in terms of money and or providing assistance to the people that are running the gang. And oftentimes they're recruited in that way, mm-hmm, right? And then they end up doing things in order to help the gang, maybe transporting drugs, maybe selling drugs. And the young ages that are involved, typically that's not unusual for gang-related organized crime, mm-hmm, either in Lloydminster or in other areas. We've seen that in other cities as well.
It just seems crimes of this nature, though, are very severe. Like, we're talking about homicides here. Mm-hmm. So that just alarms me at the age of being able to go that far. But I guess when drugs come into play, there's a debt that needs to be repaid, for lack of better words?
Yeah, exactly. And in terms of the homicides, when you have homicides like this, these 3 homicides that happened, the one in Saskatoon and then the one out by Ranfurly and the one by the airport here, it's all drug related, mm-hmm, and it's all within the groups themselves and or competition with the group. So that's what we're seeing.
And you mentioned the homicide in Saskatoon. That was completely random. They got the wrong house. They shot and killed an innocent victim is what happened there. Should people in Lloyd be scared, considering that those kinds of debts are trying to be repaid, and it sometimes is someone innocent who's in the crossfire?
I would say it's a lower risk. Generally, it's more targeted and more specific, and they're looking to deal with either those within the group or those that are creating conflict, mm-hmm, with them, and it's not as direct. and it's not directed at the general public. It's more specific.
But there always is that chance.
There's always any possibility with any sort of criminal activity, right?
With the death of Brian Gower, it seemed like it took a couple days for things to actually be released to the public. And I know us as a news agency, we'd heard a lot from viewers, from concerned citizens. Why that lag in time to not be able to release information and just even let us know what's going on?
Typically what happens is when we start a file and we get involved into a very detailed or a lengthy investigation, we don't release the information right off the hop because it's ongoing, and you can imagine that, especially when you're dealing with the drug crowd, people don't want to say anything or don't want to come forward and don't want to cooperate with the police, right? So it's already hard enough to do that already. And then if you go with the media and you put out a big splash, then it makes it even more difficult for the investigators right off the hop. So, and we don't want to affect the investigation. So when we start these investigations, typically we don't release a lot of details until we're at the point where we know details that we can release to the public and where we have a charge laid and things of that nature.
We fully understand the investigation process, but isn't there, I guess, some sort of accountability to try and calm the nerves of people around here? Like, these were very high-profile cases. The person was lying in the middle of the street, and the other person in Ranfurly was decapitated.
Yeah, certainly we are addressing those as they come up, and we release information as soon as we can.
So it is very important, once the investigation is at the place where information can be released, to get that information out there so the public can help with things like these Canada-wide warrants.
Absolutely, and that help from the public cannot be underestimated. There's places where the police, quite honestly, can't go and will never be able to go, and we count on the public and those that are actually within the gangs or within the groups or even on the periphery of the groups for information. And anytime that the public has information, we encourage them to call the police, because you might never know when one little tip can solve a whole bunch of things.
Well, thank you very much for sharing some time with me, Corporal. That was Corporal Shane Hartwell with the Lloydminster RCMP. The Cattleman's Corral crop vision is in full swing at the Lloyd X grounds. Now, if you're in the ranching business, it's been quite the past few months. An E. coli outbreak at an Alberta processing plant launched the biggest meat recall in Canadian history. Nara Manisa spoke with several ranchers at the show and got their thoughts on the state of the beef industry.
The cattle would enter the chute from the back end.
Jack Nestor shows off the latest innovation when it comes to cattle equipment. The Cattleman's Corral Crop Vision is a one-stop shop for ranchers and farmers. Now, it's a change of pace for these guys who are coming off a tumultuous past few months.
Overall, I think the industry optimism is generally picking up and people are looking towards a brighter future.
The beef industry was in the spotlight for several months last year after an E. coli outbreak at the XL Foods plant in Burks, Alberta. Now, it sparked the largest meat recall in Canadian history. Back here at home, ranchers say they're glad the scare was short-lived.
I mean, but we're used to dealing with that kind of stuff.
David Joner has been ranching for about 5 decades and says he's seen it all.
Well, of course, anything like that affects the market. But, I mean, we've been through the BSE and the E. coli thing, and, I mean, somehow we find a way to get through it, and the markets will straighten out.
Part of our problem, we only own 2 packing plants that kill 90% of our cattle. When one goes down, what do we do?
While not everyone was affected by the E. coli outbreak, these ranchers know the job comes with some big risks.
We're used to the rough markets, the rough weather. I mean, hey, we're gamblers. I mean, and we love what we're doing, and we deal with a lot of circumstances that other people wouldn't deal with.
Nara Manisa, Newcap News.